Hello, this is Google Manga, and I just watched Barcode's 9588 Myers-Briggs Part 5A Criticism of the MBTI. And I think it was a great video, great 3 videos, very interesting. And while watching the videos, I was just kind of bombarded with different ideas that I had. And I agreed with a lot of things, and I disagreed with a lot of things. And I just kind of want to maybe possibly start off a discussion about some of the things that I did agree with and some of the things that I didn't. Barcode started off with the questionable validity of... Actually, no. Scratch that. The whole idea of the MBTI is that there are types, specific types. Personally, when I was learning about the theory, I never really saw them as individual separate pieces. I always saw them as kind of hard to explain, but whenever I tell people about the theory, I tell them, imagine that you're a ball and there are 16 strings attached to you, and the string that pulls the hardest is your type. Sometimes other strings can pull harder than the other ones, and sometimes if you take a test while another string is pulling harder, then your type will literally change. So I never saw the theory as a very type-specific thing where you couldn't move from one area to another. I always saw it as a very continuous spectrum. And that whole different idea about the theory, the MBTI theory being a spectrum rather than a cut space for everybody, changes a lot of the problems that are seen with it. So just to start off with the questionable validity, let's see. Well, basically the idea is that whenever you take the test, the retest reliability is not there. Basically, if you take a test once and you get something in, for example, ESFJ, and you take it again and you get INTP, the exact opposite, basically all the scientists out there will say this is total crap, this test is totally useless, period. Whereas if you look at the test from my point of view, it just means that whoever just took the test is in the middle of right between INTP and ESFJ. Oh, another thing is that I see that the percentages you have for each letter are very important. If you have a person that's, well, let's just have an example. For a long time I couldn't figure out if I was a P or a J, until I just realized that instead of trying to figure out if you're a P or a J, you can just think about how much of a P you are and how much of a J you are, and that just takes away all the everything to people worry about. You no longer have to think about, oh man, am I this type or am I that type? Don't worry about it. You're just a blend of the two, and the percentages you have on each letter tell you how much of each type you are. That's it. Everybody's happy. And you don't have to even worry about retestability. You don't even have to worry about getting the same type as you keep going, because all it means is it's a measure of your personality at that moment. Okay, so that's that. And another thing is the... One second, I'll probably edit this out. Personality fails to predict behavior in specific situations. I will actually disagree with that. I think it does very well when you try to use it as a predictor of specific behavior. The only thing, Barcode mentioned this, that if you take out all environmental context, then it actually works pretty well. However, we live in a world that is just flooded with environmental context, and it makes forecasting very difficult, which is why this theory becomes useful when you're looking at long-term periods of patterns, of behavioral patterns. I want to make a comparison between ocean theory and MBTI. Ocean theory only has 5 letters, 5 distinctions, whereas MBTI has 16 types. This is why it seems like ocean is more correct than MBTI, because it's a lot harder to get, well, it's easier to get the retestability. Basically, ocean seems like it's more of a fluid theory. There are no types. You're just a number between 0 and 100 in each of the 4 dichotomies. So ocean, take out the N, you get what I'm talking about. But if you would label the extremes of each of those dichotomies, then you would get 16 types as well, just like in MBTI. And if you add in neuroticism, then you make, what is it, 5 on 5, 25 types. So the ocean actually tries to describe more types than MBTI. I think that if we take out neuroticism, both of them measure the exact same thing. So for example, if if this is a person's everything that a person has in its personality, then let's say that MBTI cuts it like this, whereas ocean cuts it like that. So which means that they measure the same thing, but they make the barriers between the 4 dichotomies in different areas, which is why there is correlation. It's interesting that extroversion is measured in both. However, there's only a 72% correlation. Let's see. What else did I want to say? Also, it was pointed out that when people took the MBTI test, they were normally distributed between all the 4 dichotomies. And supposedly, if there are types, it's supposed to be binomial distribution. And I love it. This is great because it pushes towards my idea that, well, probably not my idea, but whoever it was, it shows that it's a continuous spectrum and not a bimodal distribution. And I don't see this as a bad thing. I think this is great. I think personality is something very fluid, very, well, unseparated. So this just shows that it's correct. So there was also something mentioned about the self-reporting problem. How if you say a sentence, then people will tend to answer it in a way that's socially accepted. Well, that's not really a problem, because if you have a sentence that supposedly it's more socially acceptable to answer on the feeling side, then feelers will answer one way and thinkers might also answer on the feeling side. But if you have similar questions that ask about a person's feelings at different extremes, then feelers will show higher feeling answers than thinkers will, even though maybe they might, on an absolute scale, they might both be on the feeling side. That's why it's important to have not yes or no questions, but have a spectrum of answers. Another way of doing it is to have maybe several questions that are yes and no, but have one of them be only slightly feeling, whereas others can be extreme feeling. For example, is love the greatest thing on earth? Versus, what's better, mercy or justice? So they're both. So a person that is trying to say that feeling is more socially acceptable might say that love is the greatest thing on earth, whether they're a thinker or a feeler. But for example, if they're asking between what's more important, mercy or justice, a feeler might say, is more likely to say that mercy is more important, whereas a thinker would be expected to say that justice is more important. Also, Barcode, I think you mentioned earlier that you are INTP. However, by watching some of your videos and by following your own triangle theory, I think you're actually more of an INTJ than an INTP. That's it. Love to hear some feedback. Bye.